did you want to do more to your what are you intending to do here? Okay. Mhm. Well, let's do the magic trick. The magic test for this is always to flip it. So let's flip it. Whoops, not that. Oh, so you couldn't trace it. To do the yeah. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, I was going to suggest that. Yeah, I was going to suggest try putting it on your computer screen to use that as a light box. Um, well, you can see, I don't know if you can see it, but I can see that it's pretty close. And if it weren't such a centralized iconic image, it wouldn't even be an issue. I mean, if you had done it from a slightly off angle on purpose, uh, it might not be such a thing. But it's good to learn to do I want it to fit on screen, right? Whoa. Okay. So when I flip it, you can see if I put these lines right here and this one right here. No, not that. Dagnabbit. Okay, now flip it. So, you can always flip to check your symmetry. And the symmetry is pretty good. You see the blue lines. I don't know if you can see them very well, but they they are they're lining up. The main difference is just in the weight of the composition. And now I don't remember which way is up, which way is front. Is this the original way, or is it backwards? Okay, okay. I couldn't really remember. The water looks good. That looks really great. And dropped the you've dropped the what you call it, contrast on that pretty nicely. So I'm impressed. Are you using your full range of pencils? Okay, so I think you could, yeah, you could definitely make it darker in here. Um, Let me just copy this background here. So the things that I would say to do at this point, if you want to, would be more, whoops, not blue. Don't use blue. Let's go with, hey John, haven't seen you in a while. There's Lori. There's, yeah, a bunch of people in here now. That's okay. uh, no, 6. We got 6 people. Yay! So we're just going to go over some of these quick feedback things, and then if there's time, we're going to draw. What the hell is wrong with my ability to choose a tool. Who knows? All right. So, yeah, you can definitely bring it in darker here. And remember that the higher the contrast you have, the more something's going to poke out. So if you make it really the darkest, sharpest edges around the inside of the tree there, you can leave it a little bit lighter in the middle. Like if you remember from observational drawing, shadows will tend to soften or be darker around the edges. Oh, that's another thing. That will probably help a lot too. The further away the shadow gets from the object that's casting the shadow, the more spread out the shadow will get. Yeah, it'll get more fuzzy. So you could get you could get a drawing stump out and do this if you want, or you could just work up your values with your pencil, and this is going to like spread out and get softer as it gets away from the tree. In fact, you might even vignette it. I'm thinking bringing it darker around the edges to give that a sense of atmosphere, because you haven't really defined your walls or anything yet. So we can definitely do something like that, to just kind of bring it all in. And I would, anywhere you've got a deep shadow, like inside here, of course these shadows are going to match up. Oh, this would probably climb up the wall too, actually. Honestly, if it's going in from here and in the water and up, it's going to go up the wall. So your shadow coming down here, you just kind of want to follow it. Remember all of those triangles that we had to learn how to do. I would accentuate the offset of the, here's another thing. This is another reason why it might feel a little funny. When something is in perspective, you're going to find that this here, where it comes around to face you, it's going to, let me get rid of those stupid lines. It's going to be wider at this point here, and then it's going to get narrower at this point here. Because as it comes to face you, it's going to widen up. It's going to appear to widen up. So you may want to go back and just push these out a bit and bring that in kind of tight. Another thing, what I really like to do, especially when you've got water or you've got any kind of a moat, is really play up the edge of this is like make it really what's the word? I have no words today, folks. My words have decided to abandon me. I would really play up the edge of this so that you're able to do this really kind of cool thing that you could do, like almost with imagining landscape as drapery almost. So, and a little bit, but more so, exaggerate it. Always, when in doubt, exaggerate, because you don't want things to just look just as good as life or just like real. You want them to be like better than real. And if something's going to be, like a natural phenomenon, unless this is lined with stone, which is another thing you could do, you could put stone around it, and then you could play with more perspective by putting, so here's two different options you could do. Anything that you can do to fake out some depth in your drawing will be a bonus. You know what I mean? So if you can take advantage of like, if I can put this stone all the way around it, and the shadows will crawl in and out of the stones, and the stones will be in perspective, and they'll disappear in a vanishing point and all that good stuff. Or you can have them really crackly, crunchy, and like crumbling away. Or you could have misshapen stones, even like field stone. There's so much stuff you could do that would just add even Who made it to the meeting? Oh, somebody at 408. Oh, that must be Pink Monster. You got to put your real name in, or I'll forget who you are when I do tally up the extra credit points. Sierra, right? I'm not that with 60 students. I'm not that clever, and I'm losing more brain cells every day. Oh, well, I think if you right-click on your own name in the attendees list, you can change it. All right. So that's what I would do. This looks fun. It makes me want to do um, more fantasy drawings because you can really get some cool effects by utilizing. And of course, you'll have to remember where the shadows are coming from, so your shadows are consistent. Oh, so also this is going to be streaked with shadow. The whole trunk is going to be streaked with shadow, unless there's another light source. So the water could even pitch into these little cracks and crevices, and you could make this start to be super hyper real. Then I would definitely, if you have something around the edges like this, then you can make the shadows crawl up and over these stones too. And of course, the stones are going to be shadowed here on this side. Yeah, on this side you'll have some shadow. And this side will be shadowed because the light's coming from the top on kind of in the middle above. So you'll want to shadow this. And of course, shadows will disappear. You won't see the edges of the shadows creeping over a shadow necessarily. And we don't want outlines either, so I'm going to try to ditch the outlines, even though it's quicker to draw them that way. We want to try to make this look really, have a real atmosphere to it. So when you do your shading and your shadows, remember to try to get rid of those outlines, because all of your outlines, in this kind of a final piece where you really want to create the illusion of depth, you're going to want to avoid outlines because that flattens the space. So if you are comfortable with the smudge tools, the, what do you call it, tortillas, yeah, the blending stumps, they can be really good, but sometimes it can also be a nightmare because once you start using them, you have to use them everywhere. And if you decide you don't like that look, you're kind of hosed. So it's just kind of a choice you have to make. But you can also just use your pencil and develop a value with just little circles or using little varied lines. It's hard for me to see what the actual stroke looks like because we've had to reduce it down so far. But you should be able to get an almost invisible pencil mark if you want to, or you can use a specific pencil mark as a style pattern, like the one demonstration that they give in the classroom where they do that kind of rapid alternating stroke. That always works. And then the water, if the water is going to flow, think about that too. You've got water cascading down into the moat. You don't have an exit though, which is okay because it's a fantasy, but you could put an exit for the flow. And then I would think about streaking this a little bit with some highlights and shadows and pulling those rippling the shadows a little bit as it goes across the water so that it looks like it's a different surface than what you've got on your grass and your stone. So you can do a little research on running water just to see what it looks, but you're probably going to see that the shadows and reflections, because you might get some reflection from this. You might get some reflection even from the bank could reflect. I mean, you could not to say you have to do all of this for this project, but if you wanted to carry on with this and really make this into a superbly finished portfolio piece, these are things that you would think about adding. So from hopefully from looking at other examples of, so it is looking a little bit more like water now, right? Maybe a little bit. And you're going to get a little bit of a reflection. So like if you have something sticking up, if you have stones or if you have posts, or if you have, it might be fun to put like um, spikes or something ominous in the ground, because not only will you get an extra shadow, but you'll get the reflection on the water, which is cool. I don't think we studied much of reflections in this class though, but reflections on the water are like a mirror. Hmm? No, you won't screw up. Just take it easy, and don't push it. Or you, another thing you might want to do is just take it as far as you can with this. But I think this is such a cool and fun idea that maybe you'd like to expand on it and do another version of it with more intensity. You know, maybe on a illustration board instead of on paper. Because lots of times I'll redo a piece or I'll use the same theme and just replay it, make it into a more dramatic piece by painting it, even though I've already drawn it. In fact, I'll often work out a painting all in drawing first, and then then I'll paint it larger. So I think you could definitely do something like this. This is fun. I don't want to stop. Yeah, although colored pencils, I have to warn you, unless you're really a big fan of colored pencils, they're tedious. They take forever. Maybe it would be something worthwhile. Maybe even trying to do it digitally. You could scan this and try painting it digitally, because you're going to, yeah, you're going to end up doing it. And I'll show you a really quick way if you want, how to take a drawing, because lots of times it's more fun to draw on paper and work it all out, and then the actual coloring part, you can do it in Photoshop, and there's some easy tricks to that too. Or if you wanted to do like web comics, a lot of people like to do that kind of stuff. Definitely push the values on these guys. So anywhere you have a change of plane, like here, utilize that to um, accentuate your shadow. So the shadow goes up and over, goes down, and then goes up and over. It will really increase the sense of, oh no, there's no shadow there, but you know what I mean. It'll really increase the sense of depth if it changes. The shadows crawl around on top, and that's the only way I can describe it. They kind of crawl around on top and underneath the. Oh, this would be so fun. I just want to draw it. What? What? Yeah, I know. I know. I just want to play. Who else is talking? Brittany. I couldn't hear you very well. Oh, that wasn't you? Okay. Oh, Sierra. Okay. No, that's okay. It's just it's hard to tell who's talking unless I'm looking at the attendee list and then it says who's talking, which is kind of cool. So, yep, watercolor would be fun, but doing it in Photoshop as a high-res image would be faster in some ways and less risky if you are a little not if you're not already really fond and excited about watercolors. So there's two different things that you could be doing in this. One is to do most stuff that we're going to do in commercial world is going to be for print, right? So no one's going to see the original. You could watercolor it, take it into Photoshop, and then manipulate it even further. You know, fix stuff that you didn't like the way the watercolor turned out. You could also, but if you want to have a piece that you can frame and hang on your wall and sell as an original, even if you do eventually sell prints of it, you'll have an original which will be more valuable and unique than the multiple digital versions that you could do. But then you definitely would want to do it on a heavier substrate with some serious material. But See, I've already, I started getting more dramatic, I think. Just push those shadows, baby. Push those values. The value you get. This is good that it's lighter in the background and kind of misty. That's really great. So that means that you just need to pull these up even darker. I love the idea of the stone, although that's my idea, not yours. You don't have to use it, but do make the shadow crawl over the roots and make the roots really. I would really exaggerate those roots if you can. I mean, it depends how much time you have to spend on working on it, not on the total final. But I would put these roots just digging into the ground. That's just I love doing roots on trees. It's so much fun. And these, yeah. So remember your shadows here, and think about the way the bark, if it's bark or if it's smooth. I don't know if you're thinking of bark or smoothness, but everything is going to be defined by light and shadow. So when you have a shadow and then you have a light on the other side of it, whoops, like this, alternating those lights and shadows will really make stuff pop out. And bark is really rough. Now, no, there's one other thing that you should keep in mind. You've got me all excited now. I'm waking up, I feel like. Um, Textures. When you utilize texture, the texture shows up most in the areas of transitional tones. So like in the highlights, there might be almost no texture in the really high highlights. And in the really deep shadows, like in here, there might be almost no texture. It almost disappears. And if you play with that, utilize that, the real texture is going to come in the transitional areas where it crosses over from highlight to shadow. So like something like this, so that if you keep it a little, especially with something as organic as a tree, you want to keep it as irregular and rough as you possibly can. So that would be so much fun. I might steal your idea. Well, look at trees. Go outside and look at. Yeah, you could go outside and look at trees. And if you want me to demonstrate how to do this with pencil, I can totally do that too. Because it's not the same, but as doing it on the computer, it's just easier to draw over people's drawings to show them different stuff. So that's some ideas. Now let me show you. See how I'm putting a coarse shadow on the. I'm imagining that this is going to be folding under, and this is going to end up being almost completely black. You're going to want to take this pretty dark with maybe just some subtle variations of light to show that there's really a depth in there. But if this is going to be curving under, then you're going to want to make sure you get that coarse shadow on to give that a sense of form so that it looks like it's coming in on itself. Anywhere that you have a chance to get something that's hanging over and overlapping something else, the shadows are really the strongest. It's all value. It's all about value. It's the strongest thing you can possibly use to depict. And even this part of the tree is probably going to cast some shadow. You're probably going to have some shadow all around the base of this tree. So that's pretty cool. I think I like it. I think it's cool. Now I would also go back and highlight like the tops of his legs, little bits of his crown. Remember that outlines will kill your form, so you want to try to avoid the outline, even if it's just a suggestion, because we're not really focusing on the figure drawing. We're focusing on doing a scene, right? So if you think about the parts of it that are up to the light, you might see more of a form by highlighting the areas you know are facing the highlights and downplaying the parts that you know are facing that are going to be in shadow. So this would be more shadowed because it's a vertical surface and the light's coming from above. And this is going to be more shadowed because it's behind and underneath his arms. So pushing even just with value, not with line necessarily, but with value to kind of bring out the form of the figure to suggest it. Okay, let's see. Oh, this is so much fun. All right, now let me show you a really quick trick. Let me save this guy. A really quick trick for taking a line art that you've done and putting it into Photoshop and color. Who's talking in the background? Tell him to be quiet. I think it's your bloke. Take your main drawing, even if it's a value study like this, and it's a really good idea to work up, if you've got a big landscape or scene that you're trying to do, work up all the values and get that all established before you go to color anyway, because color is just icing on the cake. So you put another layer in Photoshop underneath, and you'll want to do this at the highest possible res that your computer will handle. So when you finish your drawing, scan it super high. I mean, this is for your like portfolio piece. Scan it super high and work as high as you can manage. And then you put your drawing at the top and you turn it to a multiply layer. And then you've got a layer underneath it. Okay, you'll have to mute. This is killing my ear. Oh, thank you. Sorry. I hate asking people to mute, but sometimes it's all I can do. So you can take your colors now and using different brushes, and you can really play around, but you can, this should be, okay, this better work from here. I'm going to be really upset. This should be multiply. Turn that off. This is multiply, right? And this is the background. I'm drawing in this, and I've got color. Where's my color? Why isn't it showing color? Oh, because I'm using the smudge tool because I'm an idiot. Let's try using that. There we go. All right. So you can put color in it, and it's underneath the drawing so that it doesn't, so that it does. Are you typing, Sierra? I can hear your clattering keyboard. Yeah, if you're not actually talking, it's a good idea to mute. So then you could play with your Photoshop coloring, and you're doing it underneath your values. And so at some point, you may collapse your values into your color so that you don't have, your colors aren't too saturated, because super saturated colors just look fake. And this way you can also use, I mean, I know this is way outside the scope of the project, but this is the drawing session, so this is the fun stuff, right? So we get to play. You could add other layers to do, in shadow, you're always going to have a bluish color. So I could add a little bit of blue to the shadow, and even to the shadow in here, because especially if it's coming from daylight, and smush that around and make it thinner. You can make it, it's almost like glazing. You know, you can lighten up the shadows so that they're not, it's not super blue, but it has a blue tinge to it. I could take this up even less to that. Where'd my brown go? I knocked my brown down too far. Oops, I keep using the wrong tool. So once you get, like I said, once you get your values established, then you can get in there and start manipulating the color underneath without destroying your drawing right away anyhow, which is kind of one of the nice things about digital illustration, is you do have that. So then this could be another layer to do a soft greeny color. You've got to be careful though, if you're going to print it, greens are really troublesome. They like to be, they don't like to print very well. There's something funny about that. That's way, but you can do this where that green is way too bright, so I'm going to desaturate it. It's gotten to be, and it's too blue, so pull it over. the hue over to the yellow a little bit more. So now you've got coloring underneath your shadows, and that's fun. It's too much fun. Too much fun. All right. So that's how you could take this into a color. And like I said, do it at the highest possible res if you're going to do it for, like, to continue working on it for a portfolio piece. You'll find that you may even continue to rework it and maybe add things or take things away from it, which is you can do either as a new piece or you can do it as um, an alteration to the existing piece if you want to. I'm sorry I'm not talking very well tonight. I have been working burning the midnight oil, and my brain is not happy with me. All right. So do you have any other questions about that? I mean, I know that's a little bit beyond the scope, but well, do the most important things. I think would be to fuzz out your shadows and deepen and increase the values. It's basically nearly done. I mean, as far as for the purposes of this class, it's um, a fantasy drawing in 3D with perspective, which is the focus of the study. What did I do? I erased something there, didn't I? Put the background back in. Huh. Okay. Yeah, I'll save this, save a copy of it, and send it to you. But yeah, you're very nearly done. So good job, good job. Sure, you're welcome. All right, who else is here that I could tear apart? I mean, critique. Andrea, how you doing, lady? Let's take a look at your thing here. This is so nice. You didn't fatten up that man though. Oh God, I don't know. What is yesterday? Yesterday is an illusion. Um, I think this turned out pretty darn cool. And you've got a nice technique with your pencil. This is your light source though, right? So you might want, highly recommend bringing out, getting in there with the eraser. You can even use white acrylic paint if you have to, if you can't get it light enough. And where is my, I don't want to erase it. I'm going to put white paint on it. X, DX. Oh, come on. Oh, frick. There. Since this is your light source, would help if I actually had a brush. There we go. If you're wondering what I'm doing with Photoshop and you don't understand how I'm making stuff magically get bigger and smaller, ask and I'll tell you. So since this is your light source, this is going to be the brightest, the whitest white on your entire thing is going to be the light source. And the way to increase the illusion of something being brighter is to bring up, increase the contrast immediately around it. So if you look at a flame, and somebody else in here, I don't know if they're here tonight, has a fireplace in their scene. So if you just tease up the value of the light right next to the, tease down the background value around the light to make the light more intense. It's all relationships, right? It's all about relationships. So I know that the values aren't necessarily what is the number one thing we're supposed to be learning in this particular class, but theoretically you learn it in the observational drawing class and then apply it and build on it. So you see how that makes that light even stand out even more? And then you can lighten it up right with closest to the light is going to be the brightest light. Just like shadows are sharpest where they cast and then they fuzz out. So you could add, using your eraser, probably just pull up a little more light around that and maybe even give it a little bit of a highlight along here. The more you try, the more you go for eliminating, come on, dang it. My stupid Wacom tablet is old and it turns off my keyboard, and I use my keyboard commands like a second nature, and so I don't even look at my keyboard. I just hit the keys and nothing happens, and I don't know what's wrong. So, and it's mostly because my keyboard isn't working. It kind of gets overridden by the, and I've tried using, there's all kinds of controls on here. I can do this thing here. But I always forget. All right. I haven't had dinner yet. Oh, darn you. Stop it. Ah! See, delayed reaction. All right. There. So, wherever you can add a highlight closest to the light, that will increase the illusion of 3D. And wherever you can pull out the, I'm going to double up this. I'm going to duplicate this. Sometimes it's easier just to get in and smudge around. Because you will want to, this looks great. I have no problems with it at all. I would make, the only things I would do, this is what I would suggest doing. Brightening up the light and hitting up some highlights. Trying to knock back, try to knock back the line work a little bit if you can. Although I realize that this isn't necessarily that kind of class, but the more you knock back the line work, the more illusionistically three-dimensional your layout is going to look. I mean, you could even eventually, are you going in for interior design? Graphic design. You might end up using a lot of markers anyway, design markers, the Pantones, Pantel, or I forget what they're called. They're two-sided markers that have a broad tip on one end and a thin tip on the other. And marker technique is a whole dying art that you can translate that use to, probably will be translating it to computers, because coloring in the objects with color. You know what I'm talking about with marker comps? Yeah. So this would be like that, and you could do the same thing with drawing something, scan it in, and then putting this as a multiply layer, and then doing a marker, doing a color underneath the multiply layer as a marker comp. So the things I would suggest doing are, first, I'd make this guy bigger because it's closer to us, and I don't know what necessarily the 3 dimensions of it is, but this is the closest part of the drawing to us. It's right up here. So I would make this bigger because it looks too small. And I would try to get in and just on these bigger edges, just soften them out a little bit. And just on these, on the far edges of the shadows. Keep the sharp ones down here. That's great. And anywhere you can bring up a contrasting light. And I'd put some more meat on this dude because he looks really skinny. He does. He must be about 10 feet tall. I mean, it looks really tall too. I think if if I was in charge, I would make his feet a little bit bigger, because people always look better with bigger feet. I would probably give him some hands, but I'm a figurative artist, so you can take all this with a grain of salt. Don't take it as gospel. Well, The best thing that always I think is to block stuff in and give it substance. Don't be too scared. I'm going to copy him, and I I feel like he's tilting away from me. I feel like I need to bring him down and maybe out. But you don't have to do that because it's already pretty well finished. This is just me doing my own little OCD thing. I want him a little fatter, a little bit closer to us. Because you could block him in. He looks like he's got like pantaloons. Like he's a colonial. He looks like a colonial guy. Well, there's lots of ways to draw um, people just for placement. Just for the purposes of placing them um, in a scene. I don't know why my computer is just so sluggish. I've got too many things going on, I think. I don't know what else is running, but so I would make him a little fatter and I just give him hands. Just make square things off the end of his hands. It won't hurt. It won't hurt anything. It really won't. That's what I would do. And then you can make the shadow also, should match out the hand. And remember the shadows spread a little bit as they get away from the figure. So you don't want it to be, oh, this here he's got no shoulder. Wait a second. Uh, It was off. Oh, that could be. Yeah, that could be. You're right. I think sometimes what I've been reading since we had that interesting conversation about perspective the other day, that was really eye-opening. I think that the conclusion, especially after looking into some of those articles, is that the linear perspective is flawed because it's not real. It's a translation of what you might see. I'd get rid of the nose. Don't bother with the nose. Was that a nose? Because I just got rid of it. just just keep it block man. Um, the linear perspective is flawed because it isn't real. It's just an approximation of reality, and so it, as you know, when it gets out to the edges of things, it distorts. So if it feels better to change it slightly, maybe off of the calculations, just to make it look um, like it feels more correct. You know, it's I would like skinny in the guy's body a little bit maybe. This is just niggly stuff. This is just like polish. This is what I had a boss that would say, just get in there and noodle it. Just noodle it. At this point, you can't break it really because you could turn it in the way it is and it would be fine. But if you want to take it the extra step, then that's what I would do. I would make this guy more human shape. But like I said, I'm kind of weird about as anyone who's been here long enough knows, and I would just go ahead and give him pants, man. Oh crap! I didn't mean to do that. I meant to do this. Yeah, I didn't mean to erase it. So I'm just going to give him jeans or something and bigger feet. But I am just really a crazy person when it comes to drawing figurative stuff. So yeah, no, this class is awesome. It's kicked my butt. You know why there's such talent in it? It's because I thought I knew everything there was to know about perspective, and boy, was I wrong. And that was it was very humbling and quite exciting. Although my goodness, it wore me out. I am just toast now. It's like 2 days left of this class, and I'm really about ready to just pack it in. But can't do that. I can't. There's no break for us. No rest for the wicked. We have to keep carrying on with the. Yeah, I would even do this guy like this. Oh, good for you! No more work. Oh, did I heard they like laid off all the Walmart greeters if they couldn't walk around and carry things. I thought that was a little bit weird. I don't know if that happened where you were, but or if it mattered, but yeah, I'm just playing. Let's see. I've still got the original one underneath. Well, now that okay, I'm going to call you out on that because I think that's a cop out. People drawing people is just like drawing anything. It's just a bunch of shapes. We freak out. We freak out. We freak out when we talk to think about people because people are so we're so egocentric. You know, it's all about us, man. We've got to be perfect. But I think that you could easily just push this a little further, make him a little fatter and more substantial. And oh yeah, this would be in shadow, wouldn't it? But still, feet, still his feet. This is fun. Oh, this is the end of that table, right? So I can make that a little bit darker. Yeah, it looks really good. Really, I'm not complaining. I'm just saying, if you want to, you could do this, and wouldn't this be cool? And I think I just put a shadow there, but it didn't need to be. Um, yeah, that's what I would do. And it might even be fun to take it in and color it just for yourself. I see no particular. It might, if this is the underside of the piano here, I'm if it really does go that, it might really go that far. But this might be just on the hairy edge of being, it's almost like on a line with a shadow. And it'll help this to drop back in space if you give it a little more shadow, just a little bit. Yeah, and then you can go ahead and make this even darker because it's going to be truly in shadow. So sometimes just kicking it a little bit to separate and like, you know, not using a line if you can help it. Try to stick with the value. Of course, that's always going to be the way that I talk, so take it with a grain of salt. And I might even like take this a little darker and this to a middle tone and this to be lighter. So you have your three. Wasn't a value scale on this one, right? That was with one of the early ones. Hmm? Right. It doesn't hurt to just do it so you have it and think about what is facing the light and what is directly and what is quite away from the light, and then just try to modulate a full range of value. Although you can also get by with just three values. It's always going to look cooler with a little more value, unless you're trying to do, well, you'll learn about probably about, maybe you won't, because I don't know if they learned that in graphic design. High key and low key. Whoops, I didn't mean to do that. Yeah. So sometimes everything is going to be light and sparkly, and sometimes everything is going to be like noir, dark and gritty. And you can set a mood with the range of value that you're using and the key of the coloring that you're doing. So this looks pretty cool. I'm pretty pleased. I'm glad we sorted out that. Oh, so anybody who's wondering, she's doing 2-point perspective on a vertical, which is something I think we discovered. We didn't know about it ahead of time. It just said it came up, and it was cool and exciting. So there you go. So yeah, I like it. I just made the guy fatter. That's all. See? Yeah, substantial. That looks awesome. Okay, and you guys were the only ones from the class that came by. Sierra, you have you're not as far as this, but this is where you're going to need to be heading. Um, yeah, I have nothing else to say about that. We can just go draw if we want. Poisoned by birthday cake? Whose birthday was it? I'm going to stop the recording here.